A newlywed couple vanished without a trace during their Caribbean honeymoon cruise, presumed victims of a tragic accident at sea. But 5 years later, a deep-sea fisherman hauls up their waterproof camera in his nets, revealing footage that makes everyone question what really happened that night, exposing a truth so disturbing that no one could have imagined the depths of deception that lay beneath the surface. The Mediterranean sun blazed overhead as Captain Sofia Reyes stepped onto the weathered deck of her salvage vessel, the Santa Rosa. At 52, her weathered hands bore the scars of 3 decades working these waters, first as a commercial diver, then as a maritime investigation specialist. Her reputation for recovering evidence from shipwrecks and underwater crime scenes had made her the go-to expert for insurance companies and law enforcement agencies across the region. Sofia adjusted her diving mask, hanging around her neck, and scanned the crystalline waters off the coast of Mallorca. Today's job was routine recovery work for a luxury yacht that had run aground during last month's storm. The yacht's owner needed documentation for his insurance claim, and Sofia's expertise in underwater photography and evidence collection made her the obvious choice for the assignment. Her first mate, Carlos, emerged from the equipment bay, carrying dive tanks and underwater cameras. "Everything's ready, Captain," he called out, his voice carrying the easy familiarity of someone who had worked these waters alongside Sofia for over a decade. The yacht sitting in about 40 feet of water, just like the harbour master described. Sofia nodded, pulling on her wetsuit with practiced efficiency. The Mediterranean had been her second home since childhood, when her fisherman father had taught her to read the currents and respect the sea's unpredictable moods. Those early lessons had served her well throughout her career, helping her navigate not just the physical challenges of underwater work, but the emotional weight that came with recovering pieces of other people's tragedies. As she prepared her underwater equipment, Sofia's mind wandered to the case files scattered across her desk back at the office. Missing vessels, insurance fraud investigations, and the occasional body recovery that reminded her why she preferred working with metal and machinery rather than the human casualties that sometimes accompanied maritime disasters. The ocean kept its secrets well, but Sofia had developed an almost supernatural ability to coax truth from the depths. Sofia's expertise in underwater recovery had been forged through years of witnessing the ocean's capacity for both preservation and destruction. Her reputation extended far beyond the Mediterranean's tourist-heavy waters into the darker corners of maritime investigation, where insurance companies and law enforcement agencies sought her skills to uncover truths hidden beneath the waves. She had recovered everything from smuggled artifacts to evidence in murder cases, each dive adding another layer to her understanding of how the sea both concealed and revealed its secrets. The Santa Rosa had been her floating office for the past 8 years, a converted fishing vessel that she had meticulously equipped with state-of-the-art diving equipment, underwater cameras, and a small decompression chamber. The boat's modest exterior belied the sophisticated technology housed within its hull, including sonar mapping equipment that could create detailed 3-dimensional images of underwater terrain and a specialized winch system capable of lifting objects weighing several tons from depths of up to 200 feet. Carlos had been with her since the beginning, a former Spanish Navy diver whose steady nerves and quick thinking had saved her life on more than one occasion. Their partnership had evolved into an almost telepathic understanding of each other's movements underwater, a crucial skill when working in the unpredictable environment of the Mediterranean's deeper waters. He knew her methods, respected her instincts, and never questioned her decisions to pursue evidence that others might dismiss as irrelevant. The morning sun cast long shadows across the deck as Sofia reviewed the dive plan one final time. The grounded yacht belonged to Marcus Kellner, a German businessman whose insurance company had hired Sofia to document the extent of damage to the vessel's hull and propulsion system. According to the initial reports, Kellner had been entertaining clients during a late-night cruise when the yacht struck an uncharted rocky outcrop during a sudden squall. The vessel had taken on water rapidly, forcing Kellner and his guests to abandon ship before the yacht settled on the seafloor. Sofia had seen dozens of similar cases over the years, wealthy boat owners who pushed their vessels beyond safe limits, often while under the influence of alcohol or attempting to impress passengers with reckless maneuvers. The insurance investigations that followed were usually straightforward affairs, documenting obvious negligence or equipment failure that would determine liability and payout amounts. This particular case seemed no different from the others, a routine assignment that would likely be completed within a few hours of underwater survey work. As she made final adjustments to her diving equipment, Sofia noticed a familiar figure approaching along the marina's wooden walkway. Detective Inspector Miguel Vargas of the Mallorca Maritime Police had worked with her on several previous investigations, his methodical approach to evidence collection complementing her technical expertise in underwater recovery. His presence suggested that this assignment might be more complex than the straightforward insurance documentation she had been expecting. "Sofia," Vargas called out as he stepped aboard the Santa Rosa, his expression carrying the weight of unfinished business. "I was hoping to catch you before you went down. There's something about this yacht recovery that I need to discuss with you." Vargas had the lean, weathered appearance of someone who had spent his career working along the Mediterranean coast, his dark eyes reflecting the cautious intelligence that made him one of the region's most respected maritime investigators. Sofia had collaborated with him on cases ranging from drug smuggling to suspicious drownings, and she had learned to read the subtle changes in his demeanor that indicated when a routine investigation was about to become something more significant. "What kind of something?" Sofia asked, setting down her diving gear and giving Vargas her full attention. The preliminary report made this look like a standard grounding incident. Vargas pulled a tablet from his jacket pocket and scrolled through several files before settling on a series of photographs. "Marcus Kellner has been on our radar for the past 2 years, he explained, handing Sofia the device. "Nothing we could prove, but enough circumstantial evidence to suggest he might be involved in activities beyond his legitimate shipping business." The photographs showed Kellner at various social gatherings and business meetings, his stocky frame and silver-streaked beard giving him the appearance of a successful entrepreneur enjoying the fruits of his labor. Sofia recognized several faces in the background of the images, wealthy tourists and business figures who frequented Mallorca's exclusive marina districts. There was nothing obviously incriminating about the photos, but Sofia had learned to trust Vargas's instincts when it came to identifying patterns that might not be immediately apparent. "What kind of activities?" Sofia pressed, scrolling through additional images that showed Kellner's yacht at various Mediterranean ports. "Smuggling, most likely," Vargas replied. "We've been tracking unusual shipping patterns associated with his business ventures, cargo manifests that don't quite match up with declared contents, and financial transactions that suggest income sources beyond his documented enterprises. The yacht that ran aground last month wasn't his primary vessel, but it was registered under one of his subsidiary companies." Sofia studied the photographs more carefully, noting the yacht's specifications and the timing of its various port visits. She had investigated enough maritime smuggling operations to recognize the telltale signs of vessels being used for purposes beyond legitimate transportation. The yacht's size and configuration would make it ideal for moving small, high-value cargo between Mediterranean ports while maintaining the appearance of recreational boating. "You think the grounding wasn't accidental?" Sofia concluded, handing the tablet back to Vargas. Someone was trying to destroy evidence before it could be discovered. That's one possibility, Vargas agreed. But there's another angle to this case that makes it even more interesting. 5 years ago, a newly married couple disappeared during their honeymoon cruise aboard one of Kellner's larger vessels. The official investigation concluded they had fallen overboard during rough weather, but the case was never completely closed due to inconsistencies in witness statements and timeline discrepancies. Sofia felt a familiar tightening in her chest, the sensation that always accompanied cases involving missing persons. Maritime disappearances carried a particular weight of tragedy, families left without closure, and questions that the ocean rarely answered definitively. She had worked on enough recovery operations to understand how the sea could claim lives without leaving traces, but she had also learned to recognize when human intervention might have played a role in seemingly natural tragedies. What were their names? Sofia asked, already knowing that Vargas wouldn't have brought this information unless he suspected a connection to the current case. James and Catherine Morrison, Vargas replied, consulting his notes. 26 and 24 years old, married less than a month before their honeymoon cruise. James worked as a software engineer for a cybersecurity firm in London, and Catherine was a marine biology graduate student. They had booked a week-long Mediterranean cruise as their honeymoon gift to each other. The details painted a picture of a young couple embarking on what should have been one of the happiest experiences of their lives, their future stretching ahead with all the promise and potential that came with new marriage and successful careers. Sofia had seen too many cases where such innocent beginnings led to tragic endings, but something about Vargas's tone suggested that the Morrison case contained elements that didn't fit the typical pattern of maritime accidents. "Tell me about the inconsistencies," Sofia said, recognizing that Vargas had saved the most significant information for last. Vargas opened another file on his tablet, revealing witness statements and incident reports from the original investigation. The couple was last seen at dinner on the third night of their cruise, apparently in good spirits and making plans for the following day's shore excursion. But security camera footage from the ship shows them returning to their cabin around midnight, and then Catherine Morrison appearing alone on the upper deck at approximately 2:15 in the morning. Sofia studied the timeline, noting the gap between the couple's return to their cabin and Catherine's solo appearance on deck. What about James? Was he captured on any subsequent footage? That's where it gets interesting, Vargas continued. The security cameras show Catherine on deck for approximately 15 minutes, during which time she appears to be searching for something or someone. Then she disappears from view, and neither she nor James is seen again on any of the ship's surveillance systems. The implications of this timeline were troubling, suggesting either that James had left the cabin through means that avoided security cameras, or that something had happened to him before Catherine's appearance on deck. Sofia had investigated enough maritime incidents to know that modern cruise ships were equipped with extensive surveillance systems specifically designed to prevent passengers from disappearing without detection. Did the original investigation consider the possibility that this wasn't an accident? Sofia asked. The lead investigator raised questions about the case, but Kellner's company had significant political connections, and there was pressure to conclude the investigation quickly, Vargas explained. The official finding was accidental drowning. Due to passenger negligence during rough weather conditions, Sofia absorbed this information, recognizing the pattern of influence and pressure that often accompanied cases involving wealthy business figures. She had seen similar situations where legitimate investigations were curtailed or redirected due to political considerations that prioritized economic interests over justice for victims and their families. The Mediterranean cruise ship Celestial Dream had departed from Barcelona on a perfect June evening, its gleaming white hull cutting through calm waters as passengers celebrated the beginning of what promised to be an unforgettable week-long journey. Among the 800 guests aboard were James and Catherine Morrison, newlyweds whose excitement was infectious to everyone they encountered during the first 2 days of their honeymoon voyage. James Morrison, 26 years old, with sandy, brown hair and an easy smile, worked as a senior software engineer for Quantum Securities, a London-based cybersecurity firm that specialized in protecting financial institutions from digital threats. His colleagues described him as methodical and brilliant, someone who could unravel the most complex security breaches with patience and precision. Catherine, 24 and radiating the confidence that came with academic achievement, had recently completed her master's degree in marine biology at Imperial College London, and was preparing to begin doctoral research on Mediterranean coral reef ecosystems. The couple had met 3 years earlier at a technology conference where Catherine was presenting research on using underwater sensors to monitor marine environments. James had been immediately drawn to her passion for ocean conservation, while Catherine appreciated his genuine interest in how technology could support environmental research. Their courtship had unfolded against the backdrop of London's academic and professional circles, two ambitious young people building a life together while pursuing careers they loved. Their wedding had been a modest affair, held in Catherine's hometown of Bath, with close family and friends in attendance. Rather than spending their limited savings on an elaborate ceremony, they had chosen to invest in a honeymoon that would combine relaxation with Catherine's love of marine environments. The Mediterranean cruise offered the perfect compromise, allowing them to visit several countries while giving Catherine opportunities to observe different coastal ecosystems from the ship's marine observation deck. The Celestial Dream itself was one of Kellner Maritime's newer vessels, a mid-sized luxury cruiser that catered to affluent passengers seeking a more intimate alternative to the massive cruise ships that dominated the industry. With accommodations for fewer than 1,000 guests, the ship promised personalized service and access to smaller ports that larger vessels couldn't navigate. The marketing materials emphasized the ship's commitment to environmental responsibility and its state-of-the-art navigation systems designed to minimize impact on sensitive marine habitats. During the first 2 days of the cruise, James and Catherine had embraced every aspect of the experience. Fellow passengers remembered seeing them at the captain's welcome reception, where James had engaged the ship's officers in conversations about maritime navigation technology, while Catherine discussed marine conservation efforts with other guests. They attended cooking classes featuring regional Mediterranean cuisine, participated in deck games, and spent hours on the ship's observation deck watching dolphins play in the vessel's wake. Their cabin was located on the ship's 7th deck, a mid-level accommodation with a small balcony overlooking the starboard side of the vessel. The room featured modern amenities and a comfortable sitting area where the couple had planned to spend quiet evenings reviewing the day's experiences and planning their shore excursions. Catherine had brought several marine biology reference books, hoping to identify species they might encounter during snorkeling excursions at various ports of call. The cruise itinerary included stops in Nice, Monaco, Genoa, Rome, and Barcelona, with carefully planned shore excursions that would allow passengers to explore each destination's cultural and natural attractions. James and Catherine had signed up for several guided tours, including a marine sanctuary visit in Monaco and an archaeological site exploration near Rome. Their enthusiasm for learning and exploring had made them popular with other passengers, many of whom were decades older and appreciated the couple's youthful energy and genuine curiosity about the places they were visiting. On the evening of June 14th, the 3rd night of their cruise, James and Catherine attended the ship's formal dinner service in the main dining room. Their assigned table included 2 other couples, retired professionals from Germany and Canada, who had taken several cruises with Kellner Maritime over the years. The dinner conversation had been animated, with James discussing recent developments in cybersecurity, while Catherine shared her research on the impact of tourism on Mediterranean marine ecosystems. The ship's sommelier had recommended a Spanish wine that paired well with the evening seafood course, and the couples had toasted to new friendships and successful travels. Catherine had mentioned her excitement about the following day's shore excursion to Monaco, where she hoped to visit the Oceanographic Museum and its renowned marine research facilities. James had planned to accompany her to the museum before exploring Monaco's famous casino district, a compromise that reflected their different interests while maintaining their commitment to experiencing everything the cruise had to offer. After dinner, the couples had moved to the ship's main lounge, where a jazz quartet performed standards from the 1940s and 1950s. James and Catherine had danced to several songs, their obvious affection for each other drawing smiles from other passengers, who remembered their own early years of marriage. The evening had the relaxed, celebratory atmosphere that characterized the best moments of luxury travel, when everything seemed perfect and the concerns of daily life felt wonderfully distant. Around 11:30, James and Catherine had said goodnight to their dinner companions and made their way back to their cabin. Security footage from the ship's corridor cameras showed them walking hand in hand, Catherine laughing at something James had whispered in her ear. They appeared completely relaxed and happy, showing no signs of the tension or conflict that might have preceded the tragic events that would unfold over the next several hours. The couple entered their cabin at approximately 11:45, according to the electronic keycard records that logged every entry and exit. The ship's automated systems also recorded that the cabin's balcony door was opened at 12:10, presumably to let in fresh air before the couple retired for the evening. These routine details would later become crucial pieces of evidence in the investigation that followed, timestamps that helped investigators reconstruct the final hours of James and Catherine Morrison's lives together. The disappearance of James and Catherine Morrison sent shockwaves through the cruise ship community and beyond, transforming what should have been a celebration of new marriage into a tragedy that would haunt their families for years to come. The initial response from the ship's crew followed established protocols for passenger emergencies, but the unusual circumstances surrounding their vanishing quickly escalated the situation into a full-scale maritime investigation that would involve multiple international agencies and raise uncomfortable questions about safety procedures aboard luxury cruise vessels. Captain Henrik Larsson, a 30-year veteran of commercial maritime operations, was awakened at 3:15 in the morning by his chief security officer with news that 2 passengers had failed to return to their cabin and were missing from all public areas of the ship. The Celestial Dream immediately altered course and began a systematic search pattern, with crew members conducting deck-by-deck sweeps while the ship's powerful searchlights scanned the dark waters for any sign of the missing couple. The captain also initiated emergency protocols that included notifying maritime authorities in multiple jurisdictions and preparing to coordinate with rescue vessels that could assist in the search operation. The timeline of events, as reconstructed from security footage and witness statements, painted a confusing picture that would frustrate investigators for months to come. Electronic records confirmed that James and Catherine had entered their cabin at 11:45 on the evening of June 14th, using Catherine's key card to access the room. The cabin's balcony door had been opened at 12:10, according to sensors that monitored environmental controls throughout the ship and remained open for approximately 45 minutes before being closed again. At 1:28 in the morning, security cameras captured Catherine Morrison leaving the cabin alone, wearing the same evening dress she had worn to dinner, but now appearing disheveled and agitated. The footage showed her moving quickly through the ship's corridors, checking public areas including the main lounge, the casino, and the observation deck. Her behavior suggested she was searching for someone, presumably her husband, though no cameras had recorded James leaving their cabin through the main door. The most disturbing footage came from cameras positioned on the ship's upper decks, which showed Catherine appearing at the starboard rail at approximately 2:15 in the morning. For nearly 15 minutes, she remained at the railing, occasionally leaning over to scan the water below while making gestures that suggested she was calling out to someone. Her body language conveyed increasing distress, and at one point, she appeared to remove her shoes and set them carefully on the deck beside her. At 2:31, Catherine Morrison disappeared from view of all security cameras, and neither she nor her husband was ever seen again. The electronic locks on their cabin door showed no further activity, and a search of the room revealed that most of their belongings remained undisturbed, including Catherine's purse with her identification and James's wallet containing cash and credit cards. The only items missing were the clothes they had been wearing and Catherine's small evening bag, which she had been carrying when she left the cabin. The ship's security team, led by former police detective Maria Santos, immediately secured the Morrison cabin and began interviewing passengers who had interacted with the couple during the voyage. The dining companions from the previous evening confirmed that James and Catherine had appeared happy and relaxed throughout dinner, showing no signs of marital discord or personal problems that might have led to a domestic dispute. Other passengers reported seeing the couple in various public areas during the first 3 days of the cruise, consistently describing them as affectionate and enthusiastic about their honeymoon experience. However, as the investigation progressed, several troubling inconsistencies began to emerge that would challenge the initial assumption that the Morrisons had fallen overboard accidentally. The ship's medical officer reported that James Morrison had visited the infirmary on the afternoon of June 14th, complaining of nausea and dizziness that he attributed to motion sickness. The doctor had prescribed standard anti-nausea medication, and noted that James appeared nervous and kept checking his watch during the brief consultation, behavior that seemed unusual for someone seeking routine medical attention. More significantly, the ship's communications officer revealed that James Morrison had attempted to place several ship-to-shore telephone calls during the afternoon and evening of June 14th, including one call to his employer in London that lasted nearly 20 minutes. The content of these conversations remained unknown, as passenger communications were not monitored, but the timing suggested that James had been concerned about something beyond typical vacation activities. The investigation also uncovered financial irregularities related to the Morrisons' cruise booking that raised additional questions about their presence aboard the Celestial Dream. While the couple had initially paid for their cruise package using a joint credit card, a substantial upgrade to their cabin and dining arrangements had been purchased using a wire transfer from an account that did not belong to either James or Catherine. The payment had originated from a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, with no obvious connection to the young couple's modest financial circumstances. When investigators attempted to trace the source of this mysterious payment, they encountered a complex web of offshore banking arrangements that seemed far beyond the scope of a simple honeymoon cruise. The shell company that had funded the cabin upgrade was connected to a network of international businesses, including several that had been flagged by financial intelligence agencies for possible money laundering activities. This discovery transformed the Morrison investigation from a tragic accident inquiry into a potential criminal case involving international fraud and possibly organized crime. The cruise ship's crew also provided conflicting accounts of their interactions with James Morrison during the final day of his life, Several staff members reported that James had seemed distracted and anxious, frequently checking his mobile phone despite the limited cellular coverage available while at sea. The ship's casino manager noted that James had spent nearly 2 hours at the blackjack tables on the afternoon of June 14th, playing with unusually large bets for someone who had shown no previous interest in gambling during the cruise. Most disturbing was testimony from the ship's night security supervisor, who reported seeing a man matching James Morrison's description on the ship's lower service decks at approximately midnight on June 14th. This sighting occurred more than an hour after James had supposedly returned to his cabin with Catherine, suggesting either that the security supervisor was mistaken or that James had left the cabin through means that avoided the main corridor. Cameras. The service decks were restricted areas not accessible to passengers under normal circumstances, raising questions about how James might have gained access to these parts of the ship. The ship's environmental monitoring systems provided additional puzzle pieces that further complicated the investigation. Sensors that tracked air quality and temperature throughout the vessel recorded unusual readings from the Morrison cabin. During the early morning hours of June 15th, between 1 and 2 in the morning, temperature sensors detected a significant increase in heat levels in the cabin, followed by rapid cooling that suggested windows or doors had been opened to ventilate the space. These readings were inconsistent with normal passenger behavior and suggested that something unusual had occurred in the cabin during the hours following the couple's apparent return from dinner. Captain Larson's decision to maintain the ship's original itinerary while conducting the search operation created additional complications for the investigation. By the time maritime authorities had been fully briefed on the situation and began coordinating their response, the Celestial Dream had traveled more than 60 nautical miles from the position where the Morrisons had last been seen. The search area encompassed hundreds of square miles of open ocean, with strong currents that could have carried any debris or remains far from the ship's original course. The international nature of the incident also created jurisdictional challenges that slowed the investigation and limited the resources available to search for the missing couple. The ship was registered in Panama, operated by a company incorporated in Liberia, and had been sailing in international waters when the disappearance occurred. Spanish authorities took the lead in coordinating the search and rescue operation, but multiple agencies from different countries were involved in various aspects of the investigation, creating communication problems and bureaucratic delays that frustrated both investigators and the Morrison families. James Morrison's employer, Quantum Securities, provided additional context that suggested the young software engineer might have been involved in something beyond his normal work responsibilities. Company executives revealed that James had been working on a sensitive project involving cryptocurrency security protocols, and that he had recently expressed concerns about potential vulnerabilities in financial systems used by international shipping companies. While the company insisted that James's work was purely theoretical research, the timing of his concerns about maritime financial security seemed more than coincidental, given the circumstances of his disappearance. Catherine, Morrison's academic advisor at Imperial College, London, also provided information that raised questions about the couple's presence aboard the Celestial Dream. Catherine had supposedly been taking a break from her doctoral research to go on her honeymoon, but her advisor revealed that she had recently been collecting data on shipping routes through the Mediterranean as part of a study on the impact of commercial maritime traffic on marine ecosystems. Her research had included detailed analysis of routes used by various cruise and cargo companies, including several vessels operated by Kellner Maritime. The Morrison families, devastated by the loss of their children, hired private investigators to supplement the official inquiry, But these efforts were hampered by the international complexity of the case and the limited physical evidence available. James's parents, both retired teachers from Scotland, struggled to understand how their responsible, careful son could have simply vanished without explanation. Catherine's family, including her marine biologist father, who had inspired her career choice, refused to accept that she would have fallen overboard accidentally, given her extensive knowledge of ocean safety and her strong swimming abilities. As weeks passed without any trace of the missing couple, the investigation began to focus on the possibility that James and Catherine Morrison had been victims of foul play rather than a tragic accident. The combination of financial irregularities, suspicious behavior patterns, and the unusual circumstances surrounding their disappearance suggested that their deaths might have been connected to criminal activities aboard the cruise ship that went far beyond anything the young couple could have anticipated when they booked their honeymoon voyage. The official investigation into the Morrison disappearance began with meticulous attention to detail, as Spanish maritime authorities coordinated with Interpol and several national police agencies to reconstruct the events aboard the Celestial Dream during those crucial hours between midnight and dawn on June 15th. Lead investigator Commander Elena Vasquez of the Spanish Maritime Guard brought 15 years of experience in complex maritime cases to bear on what initially appeared to be a straightforward passenger accident, but quickly revealed layers of complexity that would challenge even a seasoned investigative team. The first phase of the investigation focused on establishing a comprehensive timeline of the Morrison couple's activities during their final day aboard the cruise ship. Security footage from throughout the vessel was carefully reviewed frame by frame, creating a minute-by-minute account of their movements and interactions with other passengers and crew members. This painstaking process revealed several anomalies that had not been immediately apparent during the initial emergency response, including gaps in surveillance coverage that seemed to coincide with key moments in the timeline of events. Commander Vasquez assembled a team of digital forensic specialists to analyze the ship's electronic systems, including access control logs, communications records, and environmental monitoring data. The investigation revealed that the Celestial Dream employed sophisticated tracking technology that monitored passenger movements throughout the vessel, ostensibly for safety and security purposes, but also creating a detailed digital record of activities that proved invaluable to investigators seeking to understand what had happened to James and Catherine Morrison. The analysis of James Morrison's telephone communications during his final day revealed a pattern of increasingly urgent contact with individuals who had not been part of his normal social or professional network. Phone records showed that he had placed calls to 3 different numbers in London, 2 in Switzerland, and 1 in Monaco, with conversation durations ranging from brief 2-minute exchanges to extended discussions lasting more than half an hour. The international nature of these communications suggested that James had been involved in business or personal matters that extended far beyond the scope of a typical honeymoon cruise. When investigators attempted to identify the recipients of these calls, they encountered a complex web of corporate entities and financial institutions that seemed designed to obscure the true nature of the communications. Several of the numbers were registered to companies that existed only on paper, with registered addresses leading to anonymous mail forwarding services and virtual office providers. This level of organizational sophistication suggested that James Morrison had been involved with individuals or organizations that prioritized secrecy and anonymity in their business dealings. The forensic examination of the Morrison cabin revealed physical evidence that contradicted the initial assumption that the couple had simply fallen overboard during a late-night stroll on deck. Traces of blood were discovered on the carpet near the balcony door, along with signs of a struggle that included overturned furniture and personal belongings scattered in patterns consistent with a violent altercation. The blood samples were confirmed through DNA analysis to belong to James Morrison, indicating that he had been injured inside the cabin before his disappearance. More disturbing was the discovery of chemical residues on several surfaces throughout the cabin, including compounds that were not part of the ship's standard cleaning supplies or passenger amenities. Laboratory analysis identified these substances as sophisticated sedatives that could render a person unconscious within minutes of exposure, suggesting that either James or Catherine, or possibly both, had been deliberately incapacitated before their disappearance. The presence of these chemicals indicated premeditation and professional expertise that went far beyond the capabilities of ordinary passengers or standard cruise ship crew members. The investigation team also uncovered evidence of unauthorized access to the Morrison cabin during the hours following the couple's disappearance. Electronic lock records showed that the cabin door had been opened using a master key card at 3:47 in the morning, more than an hour after Catherine Morrison had last been seen on the ship's security cameras. This access occurred well after the couple had been reported missing, and the cabin had supposedly been secured as part of the emergency response protocols, suggesting that someone with high-level security clearance had entered the room to remove evidence or plant false clues. Commander Vasquez's team expanded their investigation to include detailed background checks on all crew members who had access to master key cards and specialized cleaning chemicals. This process revealed that several crew members had been hired shortly before the crew's departure, with employment records that contained inconsistencies and gaps that suggested false identities or deliberately obscured personal histories. The ship's Human Resources Department had apparently failed to conduct thorough background verification for these individuals, creating security vulnerabilities that could have been exploited by criminal organizations seeking to infiltrate cruise ship operations. The investigation also revealed concerning patterns in the ship's passenger manifest and booking records that suggested the Morrison cruise had been deliberately targeted by individuals with criminal intent. Analysis of reservation data showed that several passengers had booked their cabins using payment methods similar to those used for the Morrison cabin upgrade, including wire transfers from offshore shell companies and cryptocurrency transactions that were difficult to trace through conventional financial monitoring systems. These booking patterns indicated a level of coordination and planning that went far beyond coincidental criminal activity. Interviews with passengers who had interacted with James and Catherine Morrison during the cruise provided additional evidence that the couple had become unwittingly involved in criminal activities aboard the ship. Several witnesses reported seeing James in conversation with individuals who were not registered passengers, including men who appeared to have crew access, but were not wearing standard uniform identification. These interactions had occurred in restricted areas of the ship where ordinary passengers would not normally have access, suggesting that James had been either coerced or convinced to participate in activities that violated standard cruise security protocols. The ship's casino records revealed another troubling aspect of James Morrison's behavior during his final day aboard the Celestial Dream. While James had indeed spent time at the blackjack tables, detailed analysis of his gambling patterns showed that he had been playing in coordination with other players who were using sophisticated card-counting techniques and electronic devices that gave them unfair advantages over the house. The amounts involved were significant enough to suggest money laundering activities rather than recreational gambling, with James apparently serving as a front for individuals who sought to move large sums of cash through the ship's gaming operations. Commander. Vasquez's investigation team also discovered that Catherine Morrison's apparent interest in marine biology had provided cover for activities that were unrelated to her academic research. Analysis of her personal belongings revealed sophisticated underwater photography equipment that far exceeded what would be necessary for doctoral research, along with waterproof storage devices containing encrypted data files that required specialized software to access. When cryptographic experts finally decoded these files, they contained detailed information about shipping routes, cargo manifests, and port security procedures that would be valuable to individuals involved in maritime smuggling operations. The investigation revealed that the Celestial Dream itself had been used as a platform for criminal activities that extended far beyond the Morrison case. Financial records showed that the ship's owner, Marcus Kellner, had been using his cruise operations to facilitate money laundering schemes that involved wealthy passengers who paid premium prices for services that included moving illicit funds through international banking systems. The cruise ship's complex itinerary through multiple countries created opportunities for passengers to conduct financial transactions that would be difficult to trace through conventional law enforcement monitoring systems. Further investigation into Kellner's business operations revealed connections to organized crime networks that specialized in maritime fraud, drug trafficking, and human smuggling throughout the Mediterranean region. The Celestial Dream and other vessels in Kellner's fleet had been designed with hidden compartments and modified cargo areas that could be used to transport contraband materials without detection by port authorities. The luxury cruise operations served as legitimate cover for these criminal activities, with unsuspecting passengers providing additional camouflage for the illegal cargo and personnel that traveled aboard Kellner's ships. The investigation team's analysis of crew communications revealed that several staff members had been aware of criminal activities aboard the ship, but had been intimidated or bribed into maintaining silence about what they had witnessed. Encrypted messages between crew members contained references to special passengers who received services that were not part of standard cruise operations, including access to restricted areas of the ship and assistance with activities that violated maritime safety regulations. These communications suggested that the Morrison disappearance had been part of a larger pattern of criminal activity that had been ongoing for several years. Commander Vasquez's team also discovered that international law enforcement agencies had been investigating Kellner's operations for more than 2 years before the Morrison incident, but had been unable to gather sufficient evidence to support criminal charges. The Morrison case provided the breakthrough that investigators had been seeking, offering concrete evidence of violent crimes that could be used to dismantle Kellner's entire criminal network. However, the investigation also revealed that Kellner had been protected by political connections and financial relationships that extended into legitimate business and government circles throughout Europe. The psychological profile developed by criminal behaviorists suggested that James and Catherine Morrison had been specifically targeted for elimination because James's cybersecurity expertise had allowed him to discover evidence of the criminal activities aboard the ship. His attempts to contact authorities during his final day had apparently been detected by Kellner's security personnel, leading to the decision to eliminate both James and Catherine before they could expose the criminal operations. The tragic irony was that the couple's honeymoon cruise had placed them in a position where James's professional skills made him a threat to criminal organizations that he had never intended to investigate. As the investigation progressed, Commander Vasquez realized that the Morrison case represented just the beginning of what would become one of the largest maritime criminal investigations in Mediterranean history. The evidence gathered from the Celestial Dream would eventually lead to Arrests and prosecutions that spanned multiple countries and involved dozens of individuals connected to Kellner's criminal network. However, the complexity of the case and the international scope of the criminal activities meant that justice for James and Catherine Morrison would require years of additional investigation and legal proceedings. The breakthrough that would transform the Morrison investigation from a cold case into an active criminal pursuit came exactly 5 years after their disappearance, in the most unexpected of circumstances. Captain Dimitri Stavros had been working the deep waters off the coast of Crete for over 20 years, operating a small commercial fishing vessel that specialized in catching bluefin tuna in the nutrient-rich waters where the Mediterranean's deepest currents converged. His routine had remained unchanged for decades, departing before dawn, setting his nets in carefully chosen locations based on decades of experience reading ocean conditions, and returning to port with whatever the sea had provided. On the morning of June 15th, exactly 5 years to the day after James and Catherine Morrison had vanished from the celestial dream, Captain Stavros was hauling in his nets from a depth of nearly 300 feet when he noticed something unusual caught in the mesh alongside his typical catch of fish and occasional debris. The object was small and rectangular, its bright, orange waterproof casing immediately recognizable as the type of protective housing used for underwater cameras and electronic equipment. The casing showed signs of extended submersion, with marine growth and scratches that indicated it had been traveling through deep ocean currents for an extended period. Captain Stavros had found enough lost equipment over the years to know that waterproof cameras sometimes survived extended periods underwater, particularly when they were designed for professional marine use. His curiosity piqued by the possibility that the camera might contain images of marine life or underwater landscapes. He carefully extracted the device from his nets and set it aside to examine once he had completed his fishing operations for the day. The camera's robust construction and high-quality waterproof seals suggested that it might still be functional despite its obvious age and exposure to harsh marine conditions. When Captain Stavros returned to port that evening, he brought the camera to his nephew Andreas, a young man who worked as a computer technician in the nearby town of Heraklion and had experience recovering data from damaged electronic devices. Andreas immediately recognized the camera as a high-end underwater photography system worth several thousand euros, far more sophisticated than the equipment typically used by recreational divers or amateur marine photographers. The device's professional specifications and expensive construction suggested that it had belonged to someone with serious interest in underwater documentation or marine research. Andreas spent several hours carefully disassembling the camera's waterproof housing, taking extreme care not to damage any internal components that might have survived their extended underwater journey. The camera's memory card was still intact and showed no obvious signs of corruption, though the external surfaces displayed the characteristic green patina and mineral deposits that accumulated on metal surfaces exposed to seawater for extended periods. When Andreas finally connected the memory card to his computer system, he was amazed to discover that the device's data storage had remained completely intact, despite years of submersion in salt water. The memory card contained more than 400 photographs and several video files, creating a comprehensive visual record that spanned several days of what appeared to be a luxury cruise vacation. The earliest images showed a young couple exploring various ports and coastal areas throughout the Mediterranean, their obvious happiness and excitement captured in dozens of candid photographs taken during shore excursions and aboard what was clearly an upscale cruise vessel. The technical quality of the images was exceptional, suggesting that whoever had operated the camera possessed considerable skill in underwater and marine photography. As Andreas scrolled through the chronologically organized files, he began to recognize landmarks and locations that corresponded to popular cruise ship destinations throughout the Mediterranean region. The photographs documented visits to Monaco, where the couple had explored the famous Oceanographic Museum, and to various coastal towns in Italy and Spain, where they had participated in snorkeling excursions and marine wildlife observation tours. The images painted a picture of an idyllic vacation experience, with the couple appearing relaxed and deeply in love as they explored some of Europe's most beautiful coastal destinations. However, as Andreas continued reviewing the camera's contents, the tone and subject matter of the photographs began to change dramatically. The later images showed the couple aboard the cruise ship during evening hours, but their expressions had become tense and fearful rather than joyful and relaxed. Several photographs appeared to have been taken surreptitiously, showing other passengers and crew members who seemed unaware they were being documented. The technical settings used for these images indicated they had been captured using low-light techniques designed to avoid detection, suggesting that the photography had become covert rather than recreational. The most disturbing discovery came when Andreas accessed the video files stored on the camera's memory card. The final video, timestamped at 2:17 in the morning on June 15th, showed a young woman operating the camera while standing at what appeared to be a ship's railing during nighttime hours. Her voice, barely audible above the sound of ocean waves and ship engines, could be heard narrating a desperate message that would send chills through anyone who heard it. The woman identified herself as Catherine Morrison and explained that she and her husband James had discovered criminal activities aboard their cruise ship that had put their lives in immediate danger. The video revealed that James Morrison had used his cybersecurity expertise to uncover evidence of money laundering operations being conducted through the ship's casino and financial systems. Catherine's narration explained that James had documented financial transactions totaling millions of euros that were being processed through accounts connected to international criminal organizations specializing in drug trafficking and human smuggling. The couple had realized that their discovery had been detected by the ship's security personnel, and they feared for their safety as they attempted to gather additional evidence that could be provided to law enforcement authorities. Catherine's video testimony provided chilling details about threats they had received from crew members who had discovered James's investigation into the ship's financial systems. She explained that they had been warned to remain silent about what they had observed, but that James felt morally obligated to report the criminal activities to appropriate authorities once they returned to shore. The video showed Catherine's obvious terror as she described attempts by unknown individuals to enter their cabin during the night, and her growing certainty that she and James would not survive to see the end of their cruise. The final moments of the video captured sounds of struggle and violence occurring inside the cabin behind Catherine, along with her increasingly frantic attempts to complete her testimony before being discovered by whoever was threatening them. The camera's microphone recorded muffled voices speaking in multiple languages, along with sounds that suggested physical altercation and the movement of heavy objects. Catherine's final words, spoken in a whisper barely audible above the background noise, included the names of specific crew members who had been involved in the criminal activities and detailed information about hidden areas of the ship where contraband materials were being stored. Andreas immediately recognized the significance of what he had discovered and contacted local police authorities, who quickly escalated the matter to international law. Enforcement agencies that had been investigating maritime criminal activities throughout the Mediterranean region The camera and its contents were transferred to specialized forensic laboratories where digital experts could authenticate the files and extract additional technical information that might provide clues about the circumstances surrounding the Morrison couple's disappearance and the criminal network they had uncovered. The authentication process confirmed that the video files had not been altered or manipulated, and that the timestamp information corresponded exactly with the known timeline of the Morrison disappearance 5 years earlier. Technical analysis of the camera's internal systems revealed that it had been programmed with GPS coordinates that placed it aboard the Celestial Dream during the exact time frame when James and Catherine Morrison had vanished, providing concrete proof that the device had belonged to the missing couple and had somehow survived their tragic encounter with criminal elements aboard the cruise ship. The discovery of the Morrison camera created an immediate sensation within international law enforcement circles, as it provided the first concrete evidence of the criminal activities that investigators had long suspected were being conducted aboard Marcus Kellner's cruise ship operations. The video testimony recorded by Catherine Morrison in her final moments contained specific details about financial transactions, crew member identities, and operational procedures that corroborated intelligence information that had been gathered through years of surveillance and investigation by multiple international agencies. Commander Elena Vasquez, who had led the original investigation into the Morrison disappearance, was immediately notified about the camera discovery and began coordinating efforts to reopen the case with new evidence that could finally lead to criminal prosecutions. The video files provided sufficient detail to obtain international arrest warrants for several individuals who had been aboard the Celestial Dream during the Morrison cruise, including crew members who had been identified by Catherine Morrison as direct participants in the criminal activities that had led to the couple's deaths. The technical analysis of the camera's journey through deep ocean currents also provided valuable information about the location where James and Catherine Morrison had been killed and their bodies disposed of in the Mediterranean. Oceanographic experts used current patterns and marine biology data to reconstruct the camera's probable path through underwater terrain, eventually identifying a specific area where the couple's remains might still be recoverable despite the passage of 5 years since their deaths. The impact of the camera discovery extended far beyond the Morrison case itself, as the evidence it contained implicated criminal networks operating throughout the European maritime industry. The financial records documented by James Morrison revealed connections between Kellner's operations and organized crime groups involved in activities ranging from drug trafficking to human smuggling, with the cruise ship industry providing ideal cover for moving illegal materials and personnel across international borders without detection by conventional law enforcement monitoring systems. Sofia Reyes received the call from Commander Vasquez on a rainy Tuesday morning while she was reviewing equipment manifests for an upcoming salvage operation off the Portuguese coast. The excitement in Vasquez's voice was unmistakable as she explained the discovery of the Morrison camera and the urgent need for Sofia's specialized underwater recovery expertise to locate additional evidence that might still exist on the Mediterranean sea floor. The case had transformed from a 5-year-old cold file into an active international criminal investigation, and Sofia's reputation for finding evidence in impossible underwater conditions made her the obvious choice to lead the search operation. Within 48 hours, Sofia had assembled a specialized dive team aboard the Santa Rosa and was heading toward the coordinates provided by oceanographic experts who had analyzed the camera's probable underwater journey. The search area encompassed nearly 20 square nautical miles of deep Mediterranean waters, where powerful currents and complex underwater terrain created challenges that would test every aspect of Sofia's 3 decades of experience in marine recovery operations. The pressure to find additional evidence was enormous, as the Morrison camera had provided law enforcement agencies with their best opportunity to dismantle Kellner's criminal network and bring justice to countless victims of maritime crimes. The C's initial phase of the search operation involved using sophisticated sonar mapping equipment to create detailed 3-dimensional images of the sea floor in areas where the Morrison couple's remains and personal belongings might have settled after being disposed of from the cruise ship. Sofia's team worked systematically through grid patterns that covered different depth ranges and ocean current zones, looking for anomalies in the seafloor topology that might indicate the presence of human remains or manufactured objects that didn't belong in the natural marine environment. After 3 days of intensive sonar scanning, Sofia's equipment detected several promising anomalies located in a deep underwater ravine, approximately 200 feet below the surface. The objects appeared to have the size and density characteristics consistent with human remains, though the depth and challenging underwater conditions would require extremely careful diving operations to investigate without disturbing potential evidence or endangering the recovery team. Sofia had conducted similar operations in the past, but the combination of depth, current strength, and the criminal implications of what they might discover created pressure unlike anything she had experienced in her professional career. First dive to investigate the sonar anomalies revealed a scene that would haunt Sofia for the rest of her life. Secured to the seafloor with heavy chains and concrete blocks were the skeletal remains of 2 individuals, their bones picked clean by marine scavengers, but still maintaining enough structural integrity to confirm that they were human remains. Of a man and woman of approximately the right ages to be James and Catherine Morrison. Personal items scattered around the site included jewelry, clothing fragments, and electronic devices that appeared consistent with belongings that the couple might have had with them during their final moments aboard the cruise ship. The methodical recovery of evidence from the underwater crime scene required nearly a week of careful diving operations, with each item being photographed in its original position before being carefully extracted and preserved for forensic analysis. Sofia's team discovered Catherine Morrison's engagement ring still attached to skeletal finger bones, along with James Morrison's distinctive watch that his family had described to investigators years earlier. Most significantly, they recovered a waterproof document pouch that contained additional evidence of the criminal activities that had led to the couple's murder. The document pouch contained handwritten notes in James Morrison's distinctive writing, along with printed financial records and photographs that provided even more detailed evidence of the money laundering operations being conducted aboard the Celestial Dream. James had apparently been gathering comprehensive documentation of the criminal activities he had discovered, creating a detailed record that he intended to provide to law enforcement authorities once the cruise ended. The notes included specific names, dates, and transaction amounts that corroborated and expanded upon the information contained in Catherine Morrison's final video testimony. Perhaps most damaging to Kellner's criminal organization were encrypted computer files that James had copied from the ship's financial systems, containing records of transactions totaling more than 50 million euros that had been processed through accounts connected to drug trafficking, human smuggling, and weapons trading operations throughout Europe and North Africa. The sophistication of the money laundering scheme revealed that Kellner's cruise ship operations were serving as a central hub for criminal financial activities that extended far beyond the Mediterranean region into international networks spanning multiple continents. Sofia's recovery team also discovered evidence of other victims who had apparently suffered similar fates to the Morrison couple. Additional skeletal remains found in nearby areas of the seafloor suggested that James and Catherine had not been the only passengers who had been murdered for discovering criminal activities aboard Kellner's ships. Forensic analysis would later confirm that at least 6 other individuals had been killed and disposed of in the same manner over a period of several years, indicating that the Morrison murders had been part of a systematic pattern of eliminating witnesses who posed threats to the criminal organization. The forensic evidence recovered from the underwater crime scene provided law enforcement agencies with sufficient proof to issue international arrest warrants for Marcus Kellner and more than 20 individuals associated with his criminal operations. Coordinated raids conducted simultaneously across 8 European countries resulted in the arrest of key figures in the criminal network, along with the seizure of assets worth hundreds of millions of euros that had been generated through years of illegal activities conducted under the cover of legitimate cruise ship operations. Kellner himself was arrested at his luxury villa in Monaco while attempting to flee the country aboard a private yacht loaded with cash and precious metals that represented his accumulated wealth from years of criminal activities. During his arrest, Kellner was found in possession of detailed records of his criminal operations, including lists of passengers who had been targeted for elimination because they had discovered evidence of illegal activities aboard his ships. The Morrison couple's names appeared on these lists, along with notations indicating that their murders had been ordered personally by Kellner, after James Morrison's cybersecurity investigation had threatened to expose the entire criminal network. Trial proceedings that followed revealed the full scope of Kellner's criminal empire, with testimony from former crew members and passengers providing horrifying details about the systematic nature of the murders and other violent crimes that had been committed aboard his ships. The Celestial Dream and other vessels in Kellner's fleet had been specifically designed with hidden compartments and modified areas that could be used for storing contraband materials and disposing of victims whose bodies were weighted down and dropped into deep ocean waters where they were unlikely to ever be recovered. Catherine Morrison's underwater camera had provided the crucial breakthrough that allowed law enforcement agencies to uncover one of the largest maritime criminal organizations in European history, leading to prosecutions that dismantled networks involved in drug trafficking, human smuggling, and money laundering operations worth billions of euros. The evidence gathered from Sofia's underwater recovery operation proved instrumental in securing convictions for dozens of individuals involved in criminal activities that had claimed the lives of innocent victims over many years. For Sofia Reyes, the Morrison case represented both the culmination of her career in underwater recovery and a deeply personal mission to ensure that justice was served for victims whose families had never known what had happened to their loved ones. The successful recovery of evidence from the Mediterranean seafloor demonstrated the crucial role that specialized marine expertise could play in solving complex criminal cases, even years after crimes had been committed and evidence had seemingly disappeared forever beneath the ocean's surface. The Morrison family finally received the closure they had been seeking for 5 years, learning that James and Catherine had died as heroes who had risked their lives to expose criminal activities that were harming innocent people throughout the region. Their courage in documenting evidence of Kellner's operations, even knowing that they faced mortal danger, had ultimately led to justice for not only themselves, but for countless other victims of maritime crimes that might never have been solved. Without their sacrifice, the impact of the Morrison case extended throughout the cruise ship industry, leading to enhanced security protocols and international cooperation agreements designed to prevent criminal organizations from exploiting maritime transportation systems for illegal activities. Sofia's recovery operation had proven that even the deepest ocean waters could not permanently hide evidence of criminal activities, sending a powerful message to criminals who believed that the sea could serve as a perfect means of disposing of evidence and victims. As Sofia stood on the deck of the Santa Rosa, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean waters where she had recovered the Morrison evidence, she reflected on the importance of never giving up hope that justice could be achieved even in the most challenging circumstances. The ocean had kept James and Catherine Morrison's secrets for 5 years, but ultimately it had also preserved the evidence that ensured their killers would face the consequences of their crimes. If you found this story as compelling as I did, investigating it, please subscribe to my channel for more incredible true crime mysteries and underwater investigations that reveal the shocking secrets hidden beneath the waves. Your support helps me continue bringing these important stories to light, ensuring that victims like James and Catherine Morrison are never forgotten and that justice continues to prevail, even against the most sophisticated criminal organizations.